Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dave Dansereau, one of the co-founders of EnableUs, and it gives me great pleasure today for have one of our guests join us today, Jamie Coyle. And Jamie, you're here in my hometown, and it gives me a great pleasure to be able to introduce as our week 3 guest for Survivor Stories for episode 3 of this series that we're doing. And I know I told you that, before we started this interview, we have to keep it short. You and I think could talk for hours because
Yeah.
we spoke before everything shut down with COVID. We actually met early on at when we could meet physically at a coffee shop at Panera, and we got caught up because you're back in town, and it was so great to see and talk, and it was like we didn't miss a step. But now that we're remote, we are doing this again on Zoom, and I think it's so impactful for individuals who, because people coming to our website from all over, and you said something in a recent interview that you've been living with a stroke half your life.
Half of my life, yeah.
Half your life. So I think I want to talk about your book. I want to talk about, our relationship and how we got to know each other. But if you would you mind if I read the back cover of the book? Because I think it really paints a picture. We're definitely going to put this link up because if you haven't read this book or heard about The Luckiest Girl in the World, I'm just going to start by just reading this. So this is: growing up, everyone would always say how lucky I was. But at the time, I was not sure what that meant. I was just doing what I always loved, skating and playing ice hockey. Everything seemed to go my way, from winning virtually every raffle I entered to scoring the game-winning goal whenever my team needed it. As I got a little older, I could see those things before they happened, as if I knew that I was going to catch the corner of the net to get the puck past the goalie as time expired. I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. Becoming an Olympian was something I thought about as far back as I can remember. By the time I was 12, I was well on my way to living my dream. Then, on August 2008, I suffered a stroke during a hockey game. No one suspected that such a thing could happen to a 12-year-old. But as the reality of pediatric stroke turned my dream into a nightmare, the journey back to skating and playing hockey again showed me just how much I could accomplish with the love and support of my family and people all around me who cared. And I came to realize that I truly was the luckiest girl in the world. So with that said, I was getting a little emotional just reading that, because it's been, while I keep several of my favorite books on my desk here, it's been a while since I read those words. So pick us up from there, because you and I, although we were living in the same town, I think the way I came to learn of your stroke, and remind me, and I think it is relived in the book as well, I was picking up a local paper, the Valley Breeze. Yeah. And I was picking it up because I was running with Teddy's team at the time with the American Heart Stroke Association, preparing for the Boston Marathon on my own journey back. And I turned to look for the article. They had said there was a PSA, a service announcement announcing my story. And on the front page of the paper, I saw your story and what happened. So do you feel okay telling your journey a little bit and your why?
Yeah. So obviously, when you come to learn that you've suffered a stroke, it's a big shocker. You know what I mean? And when the nurse first told me, when she was like, "Jamie, you suffered a stroke," I was like, oh, is that it? Because I literally like thought I was like dying. You know what I mean? Like, and you know how it is, David, being a stroke survivor also, but just in that moment, such fear. You know what I mean? And I'd say that my why is I feel like I was put on this earth to help people, no matter how much or how little. You know what I mean?
That's perfect. And it's, I remember early on when we were first working together, and you make me smile seeing your maturity. And I
Yeah.
remember having conversations with you when we were trying to figure out how to lace up skates again, how to, and I remember still like it was yesterday, talking about, you asked me, why did this happen to me? And I remember just saying, there's a higher purpose. And right
Yeah.
now, you still may be thinking Olympics, and you may be thinking, and getting you back. And I think maybe that leads into the second question. Like when we ask other survivors in this series, we ask, what was your first milestone? Because I certainly don't want to answer that for you. I want to hear like what that was then.
Mhm.
And we set different goals at different levels, but can you maybe talk about what was your first milestone after your stroke?
My first question to my mom was, when am I going to get back on the ice? And when I got back on the ice, yes, it was way more difficult, but the smile could not leave my face. Like, I was so happy that I just made it back on the ice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because some people have it much worse than me. Some people have it better than me. It's you should never like compare. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in that moment when I was on the ice again after I had just suffered a stroke was so special to me.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that I could be part of your journey and that we're still friends to this day, because you don't know how much you also helped me. My stroke was very early on,
Mhm.
and I was trying to figure out what was next. And some of the obstacles that you were experiencing certainly still resonated. And I know we're staying positive, but I also know you faced some unbelievable, you faced some evil, I'll call it, that shouldn't have happened with returning to life after stroke. And you were in the high school, and
Yeah.
just, we're going to stay positive. But I really, you inspire me to help create more awareness. And you and your mom
Yeah.
and your family, sometimes people say and do things that are not nice because they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know if someone is limping, why they're limping. They don't
Yeah.
know if speech or language, or just, we as stroke survivors have taken an injury to our brains, and that
Yeah.
can be invisible to many,
Yeah.
because they don't realize why it may take longer, or
Yeah.
why gait is harder, or why
Yeah.
holding objects. And I think you inspired me, although, your journey also helped me teach my own children, who were very young at the time, to not be fearful of stroke, or not be fearful, to know the warning signs, because we all know the statistics that if you've had one stroke, that you are at a slightly higher risk. So the big focus of our programming and what we're doing with this interview is to create more awareness, to create more understanding, but to also help individuals get the best life after stroke. And maybe that's changing behaviors that may have had them at a higher risk. You and I both also, not only are we both hockey players, once you're a hockey player, you're always a hockey player.
Always.
And I have to show you, I want to show you in the back there, that is high. You're right up there with my family list. I don't know if you remember that. And that's a whole nother story, because we're keeping
Oh
this
yes.
short. But
I was definitely peeping that earlier. Yeah.
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 And so, you know,
So
maybe I'll write a summary of this interview to go with, and maybe we'll talk more about it. Or if you have a chance, if anyone at the end here, we're definitely going to put links into your book. But, you know, in the process of working together and just your great spirit, and you
thank you.
never lose that. You have your whole life ahead of you, and it's so rewarding to hear me talk and hear you talk about, you know, that you are doing something so positive with
Yep.
it. And as you mature, you realize that you can control what you can control and the energy that you put in. And we
Yep.
talked in our last episode of our Next Step Forward program about the power of mindset and positive psychology and happiness, and
Oh my
how
God.
you can
Yeah.
choose to be negative, or you can control what you can control and give off that great energy. And you do that, Jamie. So,
Thank you. Thank you so
so,
much.
so we talked a little bit about what's, you know, I guess the third question I would have is what today, because we asked this when we sat down for that coffee we mentioned. Asked you,
Yep.
like, I think I already asked you this question about what to you is still most bothersome to you about stroke, or the life after stroke, or maybe there's different phases of recovery that we're all experiencing. But maybe if you
Yeah.
say present day, what bothers you the most?
Like, I can move every part of my body, and I am so thankful for that. I'm so, like, I thank God, like, every day. But what is difficult is my right side is weaker, and that it's still prevalent to me in my everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that reminds me of, yeah, I'm stroke. You know what I mean? And so that, I would say, is the hardest thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can work on it at the gym. Well, not right now
Not right
because the
now.
gyms are
And
closed.
and that's one of the, where, you know, we're trying to help people do the best they can with what they have at home. And maybe it's a strap, or
Yeah.
maybe, but it is hard now, because if you had a regular routine going to the gym or going to therapy, and therapy might not be available, or if you're not at a stage where you're in formal therapy, but, you know, as a stroke survivor, you have to keep working it. You know, you have to be in
Yeah.
training like you did as an
You
athlete.
you literally have to, you have to keep going. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yep.
Because there's this one thing, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
And that,
So true.
and I think it's so prevalent, like, in stroke survivors, that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And also, we talked a little bit about mindset, but breaking the mindset that just because someone in a doctor's note or chart is saying, you know, this is a plateau. I hate that word.
I hate that
And
word
I
too.
think it's a word that is used, and I'll say it out loud, as a word to perhaps discharge you from the system, or maybe if you were lucky enough to have insurance coverage, to say, okay, well, no, that's, you know, that's good.
Yeah.
And it's never good enough for anyone who's on the receiving end of that. And especially, and that's where one of the things we want to help supporting life after stroke is to get the power of everyone's voice, because in voice and in team, there is power, and hearing your story is powerful for someone who may be early stages of their journey. And I do encourage everyone to read your book. And, you know, if you had just one tip for someone, a stroke survivor, or as a caregiver, um, you know, you're
Yeah.
many years out, but yet in hearing the stories and reading the back cover, I'm brought back to when you were 12 and 13 and
Yeah.
14 immediately. Do you have any advice?
I'd say to never compare. To never compare, because there's going to be people who are doing better than you. There are going to be people that are doing worse than you. And, you know, everyone is fighting their own battles, whether it's stroke, or whether it's cancer, or whether it's a family problem, or, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And you can never compare yourself to anyone. And also, like, just go to the gym. Even when you don't feel like it, just go, because it will pay off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's the best medicine.
Yeah.
We just don't prescribe it enough, because
Yeah.
it is transformative, and I'm so glad. And that wasn't scripted. That
No.
all the years of working together, and I'm glad so it is so
Yeah.
important to help in terms of finding balance.
And you know what? Like, you know this, anxiety after a stroke is so bad, because it's at an all-time high. You know what I mean? Like, I have severe PTSD, and I'm not ashamed to, like, admit that. You know what I mean? But going to the gym really helps me with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also depression. That's also something that isn't talked about much after stroke, but it's there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It is, again, just like, it's not like a broken arm. It's not. So someone looks and says, "Oh, she's smiling. She's okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, move on." It takes, you know, and we say this just about on every interview. No two strokes are alike. But
Mm-hmm.
that is definitely a common theme. Your brain has been injured, and no one should suffer in silence. So that is, I wrote that down. Never compare, but also what you just brought about, the importance of exercise and movement to help you stay balanced. Can I read one other point from your book? And I know it's been, you are so gracious to be able to do this after getting out of your school and getting, you know, switching gears. And I know this was a challenge. And so for anyone who is not familiar with Jamie's book and her journey, we're you know, we want to keep this short, but I do encourage you to grab this book, because as part of Jamie's journey, she was able to meet someone who became very special to her too. And this gentleman, if you're in New England, he's a legend in the sports world, Teddy Bruschi from the New England Patriots, who also is a stroke survivor. And I just want to read this because this is very impactful. And it just goes to show the power of your spirit and how you resonate with people. And just, I'm going to read it that, you know, Teddy is in this particular part of the forward to the book, saying that how team has, you know, Teddy's team is the inspiration for what he does still today. And it says, each of our runners has been an inspiration to me. They run for their mothers and their fathers. They run for their daughters and their sons. Many are stroke survivors themselves. They inspire me to play for additional seasons in the National Football League after my stroke. I think there were so many people looking for him for a comeback. And, you know, I did the same thing, looking who could I model after my own stroke. I couldn't have done this without my team. It's through this team that I met Jamie Coyle, a young hockey player who had a stroke on the ice at the age of 12. When I first heard Jamie's story, I felt an immediate connection to her. Jamie loves hockey like I love football. Jamie has the mindset of an athlete and a competitor. No challenge is too big for her. No opponent is unbeatable. To her, anything is possible for Jamie. I have seen tremendous examples of toughness, both physical and mental, throughout my 13 years of playing professional football. I'm getting chills, sorry. And what Jamie has done to get back into life the way she wants to live it is not only rivals all of those examples I have seen, but it surpasses them. She is the inspiration all athletes need to look to when facing their own unbeatable opponent. When I now look back at my stroke, which happened in 2005, I experienced many emotions, but the one emotion that stands out for them is pride. I am proud to be a stroke survivor. Without my stroke, I wouldn't have met so many other stroke survivors who have been true examples of courage and survival. I'm also proud that I can call Jamie Coyle my friend. Her story is one of invincibility, inspiration, and determination. Teddy Bruschi, amen. And I am so proud of you.
Thank you.
I have to ask you before we run out of time here, the magic wand question. We ask this to everyone. If you could wave a magic wand and change anything about your recovery, your stroke experience? Would there be anything that you feel could have been improved upon, or were there any obvious things that that really either a positive or a negative?
I'd say that I took too much of what outsiders said to my heart, and I wish I didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you talk about where you are now? Because you're doing some great work on Instagram, and I did get an Instagram account. And I told you, if you get a Twitter account, I'll get an Instagram.
Okay.
But we do have a common Facebook. I'm not on there a lot, but I am now more, that we're really trying to get in and learn more and share stories. Can you tell us about, you're doing something very similar in terms of interviewing other stroke survivors?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram account. It's called Stroke Survivors Never Quit. And on there, people just share their stories, and they put up a motivational quote. And I think that that's so important, because I just want to make people like feel good. You know what I mean? And like feel inspired and feel like they're 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 never stuck on the journey that they're on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they should never give up, like never quit.
Yep. No, that's excellent. 10 weeks into this quarantine and lockdown, I'm reading and drinking a lot of tea, and I'm reading a lot of tea, a lot of tea bag quotes. So
Yeah.
so as soon as I get my Instagram up and really figure out what I'm doing with it, I'm going to connect in, and we have a pretty active Instagram account on EnableUs, so we're going to definitely make those connections.
Yeah.
And as a community, we're stronger. And I want to thank you today, and we're going to put all those links, including how to get copies of this book. I feel everyone this should be like a must read for our EnableUs Next Step Forward program. We're going to put that in the resources for this week's lesson. And we're any parting words? I'm so happy to see you again, even though it's here. And when we're able to do this with masks or whatever the next stage is, we will have to have a follow-up. But thank you.
Thank you.